Zermatt with the unmistakable Matterhorn, starting point for perhaps the most beautiful panorama train journey in the world, the legendary Glacier Express. But today, I'm starting with a warm-up. I'm working my way up the mountains with Europe's highest rack and pinion railway, the Gornergratbahn. A short stop at 3,000 meters above sea level, with 29 4,000 meter peaks around me, breathtaking.
Oh, ist das ein Wetter hier und das Matterhorn hat auch...
Oh, what a chill here, and the Matterhorn has a cap too. It's not quite the best start for Switzerland's Toblerone mountain, so we're back tomorrow. But then in a very different, spectacular way, as start for the world's greatest train journey. Zermatt, the legendary mountain village that you really must explore first. The Bahnhofstraße takes some getting used to with its international hustle and bustle. Eyes are rather drawn into the distance to this iconic mountain. Or to the dark wooden alpine huts with their window boxes bursting with geraniums and crude stone pillars. This is a true soul of the mountain climber village. The Matterhorn has always had a magical lure for climbers, temptation, ambition and drama, with over 400 deaths so far. The mountain not only drew Louis Trinker in his legendary film, there was always a lot of adventure. And if there's a global symbol for a mountain, then this is it. I prefer to stay on the comfortable side like almost all visitors today. Here everything is developed in terms of tourist infrastructure. Even those not so keen on walking are carried gently to heights that would seriously challenge even the most experienced mountain hikers. The weather seems only to set the mountain in scene. And in keeping with this is the gondola with Swarovski glitter. That is the Matterhorn Paradise Bahn, a glass floor with a view of the glacier and the Klein Matterhorn, air conditioning, leather seats and meticulously clean panoramic windows. Thoroughly impressive.
Unter mir, mich herum, überall.
Beneath me, around me, the glacier is everywhere. Eternal ice, in the background the Matterhorn, perfect, with its 4,478 meters. Today we really see it at its most beautiful. Could there be a better beginning for a film about the Glacier Express? The express that runs from here, from Zermatt straight through Switzerland to St. Moritz? I don't think so.
Ich glaube nicht.
My heart skips a beat when I look down here and I think about how I'm gently floating over this magnificent glacier. Oh, it's amazing, it's really amazing. Given the effort climbers expend to reach these summits, I'm almost a little embarrassed about my arrival, fast track on this flying carpet. And here I am at 3,883 meters, the wind whistling around my ears, no panoramic view, off it is into the eternal ice. Although the word eternal no longer seems fitting when it comes to glaciers. Here in the Ice Palace, which, since we are in Switzerland, is of course the highest in the world, there's still enough frozen water for one or other ice sculpture, but various measuring points in the tunnel system show the experts just how dangerous change there is in the glacier. So that's my first experience, still hovering above the cold ground in the cable car just before my real train ride. But it's a good start to get a clearer idea of the topography of the area, still flying as it were, but soon battling over every meter of ground. So, this is my carriage for the actual film documentary, Switzerland's iconic train which, like the Orient Express, is an object of longing for train enthusiasts across the globe. Every night, the train is prepared afresh for the journey the next morning, a grubby Glacier Express that would be unthinkable for the Swiss. Here the trains are generally spotless and almost always on time, but the Glacier Express is the real attraction for international visitors, and so it has to be perfect. National pride demands it. No, I have not been beamed into the Tokyo subway by mistake, but as you can see, in particular for Asian visitors to Switzerland, the famous Glacier Express is a must on their tour. The Swiss themselves are much more pragmatic. After all, the line is also used by normal trains, same view, half the price. Only for you. I am now strapped down outside the helicopter in an icy wind just for this picture. A view you can't get from the ground, the Matterhorn, which sends its train out on a daily journey right across Switzerland. And now you see I've had to make several trips. Filming solely from the carriage window would quickly have become quite dull, even here in paradise. Only when you follow the train and the landscape from the outside, when you realize from the helicopter, for example, what a toy it is alongside the infinite power of nature, the topography, the rock falls, only then do you have the necessary reverence to appreciate the feat of its construction. I'm permitted to sit in the front with engine driver Martin until we reach Brick. In the narrow Kipfen gorge of the Mattertal, we are practically alone with the sometimes wild Mattervispa, a tributary of the Rhone River. The railway line sits perfectly in the picture book landscape. It is a challenge to be at the right place at the right time in the rough terrain to see the train at its best. You wouldn't think so, but here we are in the Alps' deepest valley. At the same time, the route continues downhill, a steep descent by railway standards. Meanwhile, the train has worked itself firmly into the gear wheels of the track. 1,000 vertical meters have to be overcome in the first section. The river repeatedly appears alongside to lead the way, past the beautiful and ancient Roman bridge and below the highest vineyards in Europe. Everything passes us by through panoramic windows. It is a gentle glide through constantly and rapidly changing scenery. That is the uniqueness of this train. Meanwhile, boss train Patrick is checking the tickets. A few phrases in various foreign languages are compulsory for all conductors.
Yes, if I have a Japanese group, for example, then of course I greet them when they come on board with a konnichiwa, and then I simply say my name is Patrick. That is, I am the train conductor. That is my name. Yes, and then I just walk through the crowd, and depending on whether they are eating, or if they're about to leave, then I add a sayonara. That's all part of the job.
Ready for lunch, a traditional Valais meat and cheese snack. My God, traveling through such beautiful countryside, eating something delicious at the same time. It's so wonderful to travel with the Glacier Express. And it's not the first time I've done it. The last time I had a special guest with me, the great Swiss cabaret artist Emil Steinberger, and he has a very particular opinion.
I prefer to sit here than in a Rolls Royce. I don't have any traffic jams and no stress. And I can enjoy the landscape through the panoramic window. The snow-topped mountains here, and the trees there, and in winter everything is white, and in autumn everything is colorful. It's like a big screen. This is Panavision, I'd say. Enjoy it without a theater ticket, I love that.
By now we are already in Goms. The weather has changed somewhat. But for the Glacier Express this is no longer a problem at any time of the year. Following the completion of the Furka Base Tunnel in 1982, a tunnel stretching over 15 kilometers, the train can remain in the valley, no more climbing the Furka Pass. This mountain pass, which is snowed under for at least 7 months every year, was almost the end of the Glacier Express. The train came almost within touching distance of the Rhone Glacier. But at that time, perhaps 20,000 guests were able to enjoy this in the short season on the fragile single-track route. And now, in the peak year 2008, the Glacier Express transported 260,000 passengers through the Furka Tunnel, who sadly now miss this. But of course I'd like to show it to you. The romantic steam train still exists after all. Since 1983, this rich heritage has been cared for and maintained by a volunteer association. Of course, with really beautiful trains which are lovingly prepared for full steam as soon as summer allows travel along the Forca Pass again. Almost all of the staff work here on a voluntary basis to keep a childhood dream alive, and the dedication is impressive. So I've left the Glacier Express in Andermatt to discover this hidden railway jewel for you. As soon as most of the snow has thawed away in mid-June, the cute little children's book trains fight their way up and down the pass between Realp and Oberwald on the former Glacier Express route. I don't want even to imagine that for months snow here was piled up to over 20 meters high, and that recent weeks required heavy work in order to prepare the rails, bridges and tunnels for traffic again. Every year this really is a battle against the forces of nature. For me and the camera, it is simply wonderful to be able to revel in these images. Once again I'm allowed to play Jim Button next to Luke the engine driver. The hissing monster is almost full. Here everything really is still handmade, just like 100 years ago. To think that the line which not only warms the hearts of ardent railway enthusiasts but also very ordinary travelers was to be abruptly decommissioned in the 1940s. The locomotives that had tugged the Glacier Express along this section of track since the 1930s were sold to places as far-flung as Vietnam. Today they once again earn their keep in their old homeland. After about an hour with a coffee break en route where the train stops to refill its water tanks, I'm in Gletsch, the gateway to the Rhone Glacier. By chance I meet some railway labourers, the volunteers who enthusiastically keep the work of the pioneers going.
For its time, that was an achievement that cannot be overestimated. The workers were locked in the tunnel here in winter so that they could continue working and finish the project. That sort of commitment is very unusual indeed.
You have to imagine. This engraving is from the year 1861. The artist was standing right here where I'm standing now. But when I look down from the glacier into the valley today, there's nothing left of that ice, only crashing meltwater. This is the source of the Rhone River. Its cold beginnings are in great danger. In the last 10 years alone, the ice sheet has retreated over 170 meters and it's becoming faster and faster. That behind me is the Rhone Glacier, the glacier to which the Glacier Express refers in its name. In the past, when you look at such historical pictures, you see the train traveling immediately in front of the glacier itself. Today, even if it were still to travel on the old tracks, passengers would notice nothing of the glacier. All that remains is a sliver up on the mountain. If anyone still wants to say that global warming is all just make-believe, created to sow panic, then he should come stand here. Today the Rhone Glacier has once again become a drive-in glacier, namely right next to the pass road hundreds of meters above Gletsch, which ironically was famous more than 100 years ago for the tongue of the glacier region almost to the hotel door. I feel a little sad as I take the Forca steam train back to Realp. For the world's climate as a whole, it's a trifling matter. But it's a pity that the Glacier Express has finally lost its glacier. The next morning we take the famous red and white train from Andermatt. Again, the Glacier Express must make a steep ascent up the mountain. We are heading to the highest point of the route, the Oberalp Pass, where we will soon reach 2033 meters. Quite honestly though, in the luxury of the carriage, you notice very little of this. No wonder I'm enjoying this part of the journey in excellence class. Here first-class comfort is taken to the extreme. Every traveler is guaranteed a window seat and is so spoiled by stuff that there is hardly any time left to look out of the window, which would be a pity, of course. The Excellence class sees itself more as a luxury restaurant and lounge on wheels. For a €390 surcharge on the first-class ticket, guests are able to enjoy the Glacier Express as the ultimate travel experience in Switzerland. It seems to be working. The carriage is almost always fully booked for a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It has always been true that the Glacier Express offered excellent food on the long journey of the world's slowest express train. And nostalgics will certainly remember the Gomino, that wooden panelled dining car where the waiters moved in a sort of slalom so that they didn't spill anything. Now in the Excellence class you get an excellent menu served directly at your seat, and that is really luxury. And honestly, here with this natural backdrop presented right and left as a small dessert in addition, the food, a filet au point, really delicious. So dear Deutsche Bahn, you come nowhere near, sorry. Here, on board the Glacier Express, they actually cook, even if under adventurous conditions. I'm meeting an old friend. In the 3-square-meter kitchen, Mr. Kailainathan from Sri Lanka is preparing the fillets and vegetables. He has been doing this day in, day out for almost 30 years. Rocking ever slightly to and from in the narrow space between workstation and hot stove. The daily routine is owned to perfection, and like the sailors on high seas, the rolling movements of the H kitchen trolley are balanced out masterfully. The menu is traditional and Swiss, without gourmet experiments. With an acrobatic skill capable of inspiring awe in any stewardess, the freshly prepared dishes must then be transported to the seat. Hopefully, there's still time to have one's fill from that view. On this train journey, you certainly won't be grasping for a book or newspaper. The view exerts a magical attraction. In the Excellence class, it has to be said, so does the bar. Noblesse oblige, the Glacier Express is being increasingly upgraded in areas where the expensive Swiss franc is no longer a topic of conversation. Would you like a little more? A ritual was always the highlight after a sumptuous lunch. The waiters had to master an unerring swing. A circus trick intended even to seduce the teetotaler. I remember at the time the Gomino was still part of it, the waiter always filled the schnapps glasses with a huge pouring motion.
Ah, our famous pour. Yes, we do that here too.
Oh no, you must not do that in the beautiful Excellence class, in case you spill something.
We still do that here at the bar. And when you're used to it, you even manage more or less to get almost everything in the glass. Almost everything.
The next highlight is waiting for us, the Swiss Grand Canyon, the Rhine Gorge, or the Rio Naulta as it's called here. Apart from the railway tracks, there's no space left beside the still young river. The rock walls rise up steep. One clever person once calculated that the Glacier Express climbs roughly 7,000 meters in its ups and downs during the route, hopefully without that popping in the ear, and now we have reached the bottom. On this meandering express train, the point of traveling is to see what's between destinations and not to arrive there quickly. And yet I make a short break in Chur, Switzerland's oldest city, whose historic center is so pleasantly cozy. Chur, with its 40,000 inhabitants, is certainly wealthy. For 3,000 years, people have settled here strategically along key traffic routes. For me, though, there is a very special reason why I interrupted the journey. It's about stories and history. No, not that world-famous expert article from Chur that gave millions of people nightmares. The alien monster, created by local artist H.R. Geiger, which in its film form is still capable of creating Hollywood screen horror today. No, I'm driven to the mighty headquarters of the Rhaetian Railway. Here, deep in the cellars of the archive, I'm dusting off files looking for documents from the pioneer days when Switzerland's railway lines, still so admired today, were being built. Fortunately, I have help from Jan Brünger, a third-generation railwayman who seems to know everything about the Rhaetian Railway. Rockfall, avalanches, explosions, hundreds of workers, most of them from poor Italy, lost their lives at that time. And everything meticulously documented in the archives of the railway companies.
People still talk about the dead, but today people no longer talk about the seriously injured. But of the seriously injured, some were left crippled and could no longer work at all. They were unable to earn anything after that. An insurance policy that would have enabled a worker to feed himself after an accident, there was nothing like that back then.
It makes you shudder when you look at the few pictures from the beginning of the last century. But these are just the PR photos. For the daring workers, it was often a matter of pure survival. Health and safety was zero. If a worker did suffer a fatal accident, the extended family far away at home received a small payout and the file was closed. The conditions under which the workers toiled in wind and rain at that time were catastrophic.
Mamma mia, if I had known. I live with 47 other men in a hut of just 10 by 12 meters, and we operate on 3 shifts. When I go to bed, my place is still warm from whoever slept there last. There's no means of ventilation. We sometimes have to sleep outside to get a proper rest, and then the work. It really is dangerous. Yes, it's possible that water could burst in somewhere at any moment, and then? What happens then? You can hurt yourself, you can lose an eye, an arm, and how can you work then? If it weren't for the crisis in Italy, I wouldn't have gone abroad to work. Now, I must stay healthy. I pray every day that I survive the next day.
And then the worst thing in those days, the one worker at the back, the rubble man, who collected and loaded up all the rubble on the ground from the blast. The rubble man earned half of what the blaster earned. And he reckoned that if a colleague is killed in front of me, that I'm next in his place. Basically, it's a perfidious thought. You're thinking that the person in front will be killed so that you can take his place. But at the same time, you know that the very same thing could happen to you.
Today, we travelers do not think of this when we look out at the daring route from behind the large panoramic windows. Especially here in this part of Switzerland, in Graubünden, on the tracks of the Rhaetian Railway. No wonder that the Albula route has been declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. There is a very special reason why men of my age and older in particular are taken back to the excitement of a small child when they travel here on the Glacier Express. Why this is, Emil Steinberger can explain now.
I have a colleague in Germany who has a model railway in his bedroom. 4 by 4 meters with mountains and bridges. He adores it. I have the real thing, which is of course much more impressive.
Graubünden is home of the mother of all dream railways. Now the Glacier Express rolls over its daredevil tracks, bright red as if made for Technicolor film. And then finally it's there, the Landwasser viaduct, the Kodak moment par excellence, a daring railway bridge that ends in the middle of the mountain, a breathtaking beauty. On the train itself, everything is over in such confusing speed, a precipice and then darkness. Only the helicopter view shows the elegance of the construction. You can enjoy a personal bird's eye view in the Albula Railway Museum in Bergün. Surrounded by such reality in miniature created by Märklin, the heart of the railway enthusiast beats faster. Here you don't have to worry that the train begins to list when all the passengers crowd onto the one side to take photos of the railway sky. The landscape is close enough to touch. And almost as beautiful as the original. Well, almost. But the large model railway is only a taster to lure you into the museum. With lots of love and clever museum pedagogy, the history of the Albula route along with the challenges it's faced is presented. Merely passing through on the Glacier Express would be a pity. Then in summer you would miss a very special experience indeed, locked on to a region railway train in an open top carriage to hell, cabrio bay train, and at a speed of up to 60 km per hour over the famous Albula tracks. This is a rail rider, the crazy alpine roller coaster. Anyone who has taken such a trip between Filisur and Davos, for example, with their face to the wind, fully exposed before the rattling inferno, has a completely different view of the triumph of the railway over the landscape. Or if you are lucky enough to be able to book a ride in one of the historic Pullman cars, the seat covers may seem a bit psychedelic, but the groaning and rocking carriages breathe history. And how lovely you can open the windows. Railway fans know to appreciate this. So the Glacier Express not only offers the excellence class with beautiful upholstered chairs, there used to be real saloon cars for the better off. And sometimes even today such cars are still attached. I'm in one of those saloon cars right now. Hillary Clinton is said to have sat where I'm sitting now. Haile Selassie was another passenger. Louis Armstrong, even the Shah of Persia, was once chauffeured to Davos in these cuddly armchairs with his whole entourage. And the last time I shot a film, there was another very special car. Namely one designed by Philip Stark, a crazy bar carriage, and I'd like to show you quickly just how that was back then. No, really? Alp horns on the train? As I was filming there, a party group from St. Moritz was celebrating a birthday. So this is how it is when jet-setters from this luxury destination travel. The bar carriage of the French cult designer Philippe Starck already appeared bizarre. Champagne and appetizers, this is one way a party can roll towards its destination. During the many shoots on the Glacier Express over the years, I've got to know a variety of people. This is what makes the train so unique. When you roll through the landscape on the Glacier Express, you can easily imagine why the first Heidi film was shot here of all places. But railway fans tend to pay attention more to very different highlights, the many spiral circular loop tunnels. These can also only fully be appreciated if you lie in wait outside with your camera to record the confusing movements of the train, and that within a few minutes. Passengers on the train, on the other hand, wonder at most why a church tower or viaduct passes the window several times, but always on the other side of the carriage. No wonder that UNESCO was thrilled. Meanwhile, Switzerland's flagship carriages have reached the last leg of their journey, the Engadin. It is the special Graubünden charm of the ideal world, and unnaturally beautiful. Before St. Moritz you feel pleasantly tired. If I hadn't got on and off the train so often because of the film, I would have had a crash course in Switzerland. Oh, we finally made it. 8 hours of travel through Switzerland from Zermatt to St. Moritz on the legendary Glacier Express, the world's slowest express train, as they always say. Well, you don't have to be a railway enthusiast to really enjoy this journey. Switzerland is simply the most railway-crazed country there is, and for this, my fully recommendation, we should follow their lead.
Absolute Empfehlung, sollte man nachmachen.
And after the journey is before the journey, day after day, weather permitting of course. At least 2 long trains, one in Zermatt and the other in St. Moritz, set off in the morning to make their journey across Switzerland. The pleasure is certainly not cheap, as you can imagine, in Switzerland, but one of the most recommendable ways to take some time out and slow down on perhaps one of the God's most beautiful stretches of railway between glacial streams and alpine meadows.